I may not understand when you say intrinsic, because when we say intrinsic, we mean that it inheres within the specific thing, but we don't mean that it's locally present inside that thing.
That's a very subtle distinction. Okay, I know what you mean. It's an intrinsic property of a thing.
Yeah, if by what you mean is
being a physical attribute.
Yeah, if by what you mean that the soul of Christ, like the hypostasis of Christ, the person of Christ, wasn't inside the humanity, everyone will be fine with saying that, but he's united to it the same way that our souls, for Christians, are united to our bodies, yet our soul, if you cut my arm off, my soul's not going to leak out of my arm, right? It's not in there. It's united to it, sure, but it's not in there. That's why we speak of a hypostatic union.
It's a property of.
Yeah, rather than a hypostatic.
What aspect inside of it is intrinsic? For example, if you cut off my hand,
yeah,
I'm still me, as you say.
I guess so.
If you cut off my head,
so I got to sit down. Is that okay? I'm just going to sit down.
Actually, sitting down is a really good idea.
Yeah, so.
If you cut off my head, I think I cease to be me. So there are bits of me which are more essential and entangled with my identity than others.
I see.
Particularly my brain.
Oh, because you're a physicalist, right?
Not necessarily.
Well, do you believe that there's anything outside of the material world?
I think it's possible, but the whole question may have been misconstrued in the first place. It might simply be not asking the right question.
Maybe. Is there a problem?
Quite a lot. You're framing the question wrong, so you get wrong answers. Okay?
So is there a problem with my question?
I didn't hear your question. I heard you talking. You seem to be quite eloquent.
Oh, my question was, is there anything...
Hang on. If you want to sit...
Is there anything...
Are you sure you want to sit right next to that?
Yeah.
Sensible.
That's probably not the... Probably not the best idea. Hold on, wait. JC.
The question he asked.
SIIIG. What's up, bro?
Good? Yeah, man.
Are you good? You not feeling well?
Yeah.
You're cool, yeah?
Yeah, man. I just don't come to the court. Yeah. I'm just having a call. Oh, wow. Oh, yeah. So, do you want to go somewhere else? Sorry, man.
Like that was a good metaphor of cutting the hand off.
Yeah.
Anywhere but if you want to sit down.
I mean, we don't need to. It's just like my legs got weak, right?
I'm
so
perfectly happy if you want to sit down.
It's okay.
Just don't be sitting right next to the guy with the loudest voice at speakers.
Yeah, it's not the best. I mean, let him cook. You know what I'm saying? Let him cook. I mean, he's doing his thing. Yeah, we'll go over here. But that's an interesting conversation, right? I mean, the whole idea of Christ having a human soul is something that, as Christians, we've always tried to defend. Because
I haven't heard that.
I know, and it's because a lot of people, when we...
Sit.
I mean, yeah, so usually when we talk, when you meet Christians, a lot of the time, a lot of them don't study the history of Christianity.
Right.
And so a lot of the time they end up believing things that simply aren't true.
Right.
A lot of the Christians you see are individuals that are non-denominational. They're online and they don't, you know what I mean?
I'm sorry.
No, it's a good idea.
It's a better way to do things, you know?
It's a hippie commune.
Exactly. It's literally a hippie commune, you know what I mean? Like, just like that tree is okay now, you know what I mean? That's fine.
And the cloud, sorry.
But, so it's fine. But that's the idea, right? A lot of the Christians that we see that preach online are non-denominational.
They think that Jesus' soul is something above that of a human.
Yeah, no.
It works better if you conceptualize
Christ as having a human soul, yeah.
It's the same as he's sharing a common nature with other people.
Well, that's actually something that we literally fought for. So there is the idea that God is, that Christ is consubstantial with the Father, right? So he's of the same substance as the Father. That's what Trinitarians believe. But we also use that term for humans. That term homoousios in the Nicene Creed, we use that for Christ's human nature as well. We say that Christ is consubstantial with us. So he has.
So I'm trying to pinpoint how you conceptualize Christ if he is not implicit. As you said, if I can start cutting bits of Christ, and we don't need to dig too deep into this.
Yeah.
I don't have a huge problem with the Trinity, but I don't think it's literally true. I don't have a problem with most religions.
Nice.
And I think they tend to all of them tend to understand that God is one thing, but most of them understand he manifests as a multiplicity. And Christianity happens to be a threesome, and Hinduism is like 2,000.
So with Hinduism is really interesting, right?
Still works for me better than the Muslim conception that God is outside reality. So in most Abrahamic traditions and the Eastern tradition, God is somehow implicit within reality. In their model, God is outside, and that creates profound differences in the way they think, I think.
And you got that idea from like Muslims and speaking with other religions and so on?
Yeah, they clearly delineate God is outside the cosmos. If I call the cosmos physical creation, God is outside it and he creates it. Therefore, to them, the idea of the Trinity is absurd, and they're correct to find it absurd because they're coming from that model. It would be totally incompatible with that model.
Well,
They
think
go,
of
how
it.
can something infinite suddenly fit into a finite space? It can't. You Christians are stupid, and then they get clickbait.
Yeah, they do it all the time, but that's not even what we believe.
Well-
So the idea that I'll give you like a little bit of like some history, maybe that will help, right? So Muslims.
I don't feel beholden to the Council of Nicaea at all.
That's okay.
Because that's a bunch of guys, 300 years later, who sat and had a philosophical meeting. They reached certain conclusions, and then we're supposed to carry that baggage.
They didn't even conclude
We might do a
anything.
better job than they did.
Well, the people that met at Nicaea already believed certain things before entering into the synod. The synod was called specifically by the emperor at the time. He called 2,500 people to come to the council.
To be clear, I don't care how many people turned up. To me, they're human beings. They had a chat, and they can get it wrong.
That's not my point. My point was.
They weren't with Jesus. They didn't do what he did.
Sure, but the
They're not
people.
part of that story.
Yeah, but those people aren't random individuals that got up one day. What I'm saying is those people come from a long network of teachers that all the way date back to the very first students of Jesus.
They've got some credentials, and I'm saying is they're not sacrosanct to me. In a hierarchy of importance, Jesus is there, actually practice stuff, theoretically. Then you've got people's opinion on Jesus later, and that isn't as sacrosanct as the core text.
So
and then you've
the core text was made by the people that Jesus endorsed,
Matthew, Mark, Luke, John.
the apostles.
Okay, so we've got 4 Gospels, which way precede the Council of Nicaea.
Sure.
And even those are written by people who weren't there at the time.
They were. So Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. So Luke specifically was with the apostolic men. Mark was a student of Peter. John was one of Jesus' best friend, if not the most best friend of Jesus in that circle. Matthew was a tax collector that joined Jesus as an
I'm
apostle.
impressed by your knowledge base.
So the idea.
Nonetheless, I said they weren't there at the time, and you said no, but you meant yes, because you just counted them off and showed they weren't there at the time.
They were at the time.
No,
They were all. So
They
again,
weren't there. But
Matthew was a
at the time. I mean, did they meet Jesus?
they were students of
Okay,
Jesus.
that was my question. Did they meet Jesus?
Yes, because they're students.
No, you mean it metaphorically, don't you?
No, I literally mean that they were students of Jesus.
Sorry, then I'm wrong. Sorry, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John physically lived at the same physical time as Jesus.
Yes,
and physically
Matthew, John.
Yeah.
Matthew and John were
Matthew
both.
and John were his disciples.
They were his students. That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying.
They traveled with him for.
They were called.
They-
For example, they were called
I'm
mathetes.
supposed to be good at this. Hang on.
Yeah, John was the beloved
No, because
disciple.
I always
Yeah.
hang on. 13 disciples. Peter at the top of the tree.
No.
Everybody,
Sure, or John.
everybody I've spoken to confounded my assumption that the books would have been written by people who were alive at the time.
Yeah, the
I'm
people were
hearing
alive.
They were written like 70 years later. One of them was written 70 years later.
Because you can write something at a
Hang on.
later
One
date.
of the-
No,
But
hang on. Just run the maths.
yeah,
If you write a book 70 years later, how
So-
old are you when you write it? If you were around to think about it.
they were writing it at.
I mean,
Yeah, so the
Yeah,
disciples,
they were
so
like
the disciples,
teenage
so
boys.
the
Yeah.
disciples themselves, right? So Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. The disciples
Okay,
them.
we need to look this up.
So it's okay. I
We
here.
need to Google it.
I have a database for these specific individuals here. I'll show you.
No, if
So
I'm wrong about this, I'm going to eat humble pie because I've been
So-
walking around for 8. But seriously, do you want to fact check? Because you sound like you really know your Christian.
yeah, so patristically, Matthew was a tax collector, so he wasn't a boy. He was old enough to be a tax collector. That's why he died early.
Yeah.
Mark was Peter's first-hand student. He actually interpreted things for him. The Gospel of Mark is the preaching.
There's a sleight of hand here where Peter preached. I know Peter met Jesus.
right.
I'm not arguing. I'm not saying I even believe in the narrative literally, okay? But there is a story.
Yeah, so
And
Peter met.
It's like me doing the Lord of the Rings. I know Frodo
Yes,
does
yes.
carry.
Yeah.
I love it.
So Peter met Jesus, right?
Yeah.
So Peter met
we
Jesus.
know is his right-hand man, and he denies him 3 times, the cockroach and all that, and then
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
preaches later, ends up getting crucified upside down and
Right.
penance and all of this.
And then he calls Mark his son.
Fine. Now you're saying which of the 4 was his student?
Mark.
Mark was his student,
Yeah.
but Mark also met Jesus
Mark also met Jesus.
physically.
Well, I'm inclined to believe yes, but it doesn't matter.
Hang on. Now
Hold on.
Wait,
I'm,
wait.
Hold on.
I've been. Hold on.
Very clearly.
Yeah.
3 times.
Because
And I
it
said, I'm willing
depends.
to eat humble pie, but when I ask it a 4th time,
Yeah,
I'm
but it-
discovering Again, I'll ask, did Mark physically meet Jesus? Not in spirit, not
Uh-huh.
metaphorically.
I didn't say
not through-
I didn't say
I
metaphorically.
mean literally physically. If I had a camera and
Yeah.
I could go back in time and film everything that ever happened, would there be
Oh.
a physical photograph? Would you
Yeah,
say
then yes, he did. Yeah.
Mark
Yes.
physically met Jesus?
He was one of the 70. Jesus didn't have 12 apostles, he had 70 disciples. 7-0. Mark wasn't one of the 12. Mark was one of the
Tell you
guys.
what, there's two ways we can go. We can Google it now and waste time, or we can Google it at the end. and
Yeah.
find out,
Okay.
Also, yeah.
Because no, if I'm
In
right,
the Bible,
quiet,
it's
so I
called.
can just Google it while you're talking.
Yeah, okay, so
Please do.
so could you
just go to
search
the
up
Bible.
search up whether Mark, first of all, search up whether Mark was an apostle of Peter, and then search up was Mark one of the 70 disciples.
I know that.
John
And then
was
go
the
to
one
1
called
Peter 3 verse
beloved
15.
That was like leaning on Jesus at the Last Supper. Like John was like the
Now,
one
the only
disciple
one
that
of those
Jesus
four
loved.
that you could possibly say wasn't meeting Jesus was
Luke.
Luke.
Yeah.
But that's because he was with Paul and got confirmed by the other
Okay,
disciples.
so Luke, we agree, wasn't there.
Right.
Yeah, sure.
Okay,
Right.
the other three are up for grabs, and two of them you're pretty
Two of
sure.
them are 100% confirmed.
Two of them are
I know that
100%.
names reoccur. You end up with the name Simon called Peter. You end up with names of disciples. Well, I mean, Mary, for goodness. There's two Marys.
Yes, there are two Marys.
Okay, so it's not like
Mary,
there are
Mary
maybe two.
Magdalene.
And then Mary, the mother of
you know?
Jesus.
another
Mother of
Mary,
God. Yeah.
So
So,
Right.
yeah, so did you search that up? So, yeah. So the idea, so essentially, right?
it's not happening.
So Luke, right, when he writes
Signal
his,
doesn't-
yeah, it's weird, it's because of height, right?
Yeah.
So when Luke writes his gospel,
I'm joking. I'm joking.
when Luke writes his gospel, he tells you the reason why.
Yeah.
At the very beginning, he says, I have went and I've researched and I've gone to these different people that still existed at the time to get an informed account on the things that we believe. So yeah, just Luke chapter 1, verse 1 to 3, New Testament.
You should ask Bob.
You can ask Bob, Bob will agree with me.
Bob's on the thing.
Bob will agree with me.
I'll have the
hands are
conversation on the
numb.
assumption I'm wrong for the minute, and I'll
Yeah.
fact check later.
It's okay.
It's not pivotal to my position.
No.
Although
But we were talking.
I do feel more confidence in the Gospels. if
Yeah,
people-
so right here it
I
says,
revert to my original point. The Council of Nicaea
Yeah.
were not there. Point of fact.
but I still,
That's
yeah,
300
that's a fact.
years
Yeah,
later.
yeah. So every single person at Nicaea was not there.
Who were rubber stamping what we're supposed to do on it, and I object to that.
So no. So that's fine. But
I'm
what
not saying
I
they're necessarily wrong, but I'm saying you shouldn't take them as sacrosanct.
I would take them as sacrosanct if they had the right to be taken as such. If they are students of people,
With rights in your hand.
if
For me,
they,
you would have to, if
Inspiration
you
of
want
the
the rights,
Holy
you have to be
Spirit,
bloody
man.
Jesus.
no, if they were
Jesus has the
handpicked
right.
and studied
Everyone else
under
is secondary.
specific people that trace
Well,
back to Paul and Peter and those apostles, they're
Yeah,
fine.
but then also Roman Catholics even now talk about apostolic succession.
Yeah, so do Orthodox Christians. So do Anglicans.
But-
Most Christians
Doesn't
argue for
really
that.
mean anything anymore.
Succession.
Well, what do you mean by like, does it mean anything anymore? Well,
I'm obviously on your side in this debate.
No, but yeah.
In that, so apostolic succession is one of the sacraments that the Roman Catholics.
It's
have
not a
properly
sacrament.
released. It's not.
so the Holy Orders, I guess in some sense, like Holy Orders is a sacrament, but apostolic succession,
It's the seventh, isn't it? Holy orders count.
yeah, but apostolic succession in itself is the idea that the apostles themselves, the 12, the 70, and then ultimately the 500, those people had students of their own. They passed down the deposit of faith that Christ originally had and passed it down to those students. Those students went on to have students of their own
I get
and
it.
carried on the
I
process.
don't think that is not an objectively convincing argument. It doesn't mean that they're not qualified or right, but you can't argue
Objectively
that
convincing?
because there is a lineage of people who have all rubber stamped each other, yeah? That doesn't mean automatically
So
that they're
you
getting,
said-
getting their data correct.
You said
There
objectively
is no other arena in the universe where that principle applies.
Islam,
So if you,
literally Islam.
no, I don't think it works with them either.
Okay, that's
I don't
fine.
think the principle of a group of people who share a common idea,
As well as Hinduism
hanging out
and
together going,
Buddhism.
yeah, we can all concur that we're the
and
expert.
and most religions as well as non-religious systems do the exact same things. How we
Which is
record
one of the
history.
problems with religion.
No, I'm saying non-religious systems do it as well. That's how we record history.
I'm not saying that we don't. I check empirical data whenever possible.
How do you know Caesar was alive?
Well, actually, as it happens, I don't. But I lay fair bets he was based on my culture, my understanding from my culture, and the fact it'd be fairly amazing if I'd been misinformed on this.
Your cult. So because the people around you say, "Oh yeah, this guy was alive."
My way of saying what you just said. Yeah.
Well, but what I'm saying, right, is
So I
that
don't
it's.
empirically know. I know I have strong empirical evidence.
So do you know, for example, that the mustache man existed?
What?
I can't say his name because I'm being recorded right now. You see, the mustache. Yeah, that guy. The guy that somehow did very terrible things to the Jewish community. I can't say that. Yeah, I can't say it. His name is he's redacted. His name is redacted. Yeah, they're redacted by TikTok and basically social media. They'll make a whole thing out of it.
The Chinese app that may be screwing with our lives.
Hey, listen, I'm not saying anything. Listen, TikTok, we love you. YouTube, we love you. Yes, Susan.
We love you if you're redacting keywords.
We love you. Okay, this guy is on his own. I'm not involved. No, I'm
I
kidding.
think that the Christian thing of honesty and virtue.
I'm being very honestly.
Very quickly.
I'm very honestly. I'm saying.
To be honest, we don't want him to get edited.
Yeah, I'm not trying to get cancelled. What?
I think
The idea that.
paying unto Caesar what is due to TikTok. And
Well,
that's not the right moral framework.
well, I'm giving to TikTok what's to TikTok, you know.
I think it is very important that everybody understands there was a guy called Hitler and discusses the context of what he did
Sure.
and how he arose.
How do you know he
can't do
existed?
that if you don't, I don't know. Look, if you want to do it,
Many
I
people
don't.
that argue that the Holocaust never happened.
Yeah, I mean, unless you're going to be a Holocaust denier,
Well, that, yeah.
I think it's incredibly likely the Holocaust happened.
how do you know that it happened?
I don't know, because I'm going to do a pistol. I don't know anything except I am. And I always think discussions totally end up stuck. So I only know I am, and thereafter it's probabilities.
How do you know that you
In terms
exist?
of probabilities, it seems
Yeah.
massively probable there was a guy.
No. So it's not that this thing actually happened, because the idea of history, a lot of people assume that history is trying to work out what most likely happened, but really we're trying to record what did take place.
What's the difference between those two? You just said the same thing two different ways.
No, what most likely happened is going to be some sort of a posteriori theory, which is going to be around like 80 to 90%. Like you could be pretty okay with it. I want certainty in history. Like for example, how do I know what I did last week?
Hang on, yeah, it's hermeneutics. I know everything is hermeneutics.
Sure, but how do I know what I did last week?
You don't. That was my point. That's why I said I don't know.
So do you know? How do you know that we've had a conversation 5 seconds ago?
I don't know for sure. It's just highly probable.
It's highly probable that we had a.
Okay.
All right. So
Cool, I like that.
so your idea.
I'm very anchored. Okay.
So your idea. So just to clarify, your idea is that we had a conversation 5 seconds ago, but you're not sure. You're not certain that there was a conversation 5 seconds ago.
Descartes, I think therefore I am.
I mean, I can't lie. That takes a lot of faith for me to do that. I mean, like a conversation 5 seconds ago. You know, to say that the only thing that you can be
I'm
certain.
trying to be very, very rigorous because I know you're going to get into complicated topics.
Yeah.
So if you find your terms clearly, you've got to have an epistemic hierarchy clearly laid out.
Yeah, okay.
In other words, in terms of how certain can I be about different things, a clear epistemic hierarchy.
Yeah.
And at the top of the certainty says I am. So one thing I can be absolutely sure about, inevitably and always.
How do you know
Everything
that?
after I don't have to because it's pre-intellectual. It's not an inference. It's the thing. It provides the raw data that inference would act.
Yeah, but how do you know you exist? Is my question. Like, how do you know that you exist?
Because there is, I don't even know that I exist. I'm aspiring to a statement which is incredibly close to what God says, and I don't think it's coincidence, which is I am that I am.
Yeah, well, God says
know intrinsically that you are. Like,
the same way that we can be.
and then when he speaks,
I think-
life.
Well, what we're saying is that we can be certain about other things as
Why
well.
the name of God was held sacrosanct is because He's providing.
What?
Which what? Subjective. No, I'm not a subjective idea.
Well, you seem to be
A
subjectivist because you said
philosophical idea that only one's mind is sure to exist.
Oh, okay. In that sense, yeah.
You're a subjectivist.
Well, there's levels of solipsism which go further to argue that because the only thing I can be sure of is my mind, it follows that there's nothing outside it.
But you're not
I
saying
do
that.
argue that, and I don't believe that. So although I think the only thing I can be certain of is I am,
Yeah.
I have considerable faith and
Faith.
reasonable objective logic.
I mean, given this idea, yes, you would have a lot of faith.
Everything else is faith. After I am, everything is faith.
Are you certain that there is faith?
Nope. As I said, I'm certain that I am, and everything after that would be on a scale of probability.
Okay, so
and
are you
any
certain?
assertion, therefore, is on a scale of
My
probability.
question is then, are you certain that there are scales of probability?
Nope.
So you're not certain that there are scales of probability?
If I say, you can really infer, if I say the only thing I'm sure of is I am,
Yes.
you can assume that any assertion aside from that assertion is not 100%.
But that would be
You can
another
ask me
thing.
the question 100%.
Yeah, but that would be another thing that you know then, because those are two things.
That's
The
your
fact that I am,
influence,
and then the
my
fact that other things that are not I am are probability.
Yeah.
Okay,
I don't
so
know
then those are
I don't-
two things that you know.
No. What?
Yeah, so The fact that
I
other
don't
things
know-
are
let me be clear,
probability.
I don't know that you are. I don't know that I'm having this conversation.
I'm not saying that you know who I am, because you've already accepted that you don't even know that we're having a conversation right now. We're saying to you, do you know that apart from the fact that you exist, that it is possible that there is possible things?
No, I think it's highly probable.
Possibility is a scale of probability. That's fine.
Yeah, and I'm saying everything's on a scale of probability apart from the certainty of I am.
Okay, how do you know that there is such a scale of probability in the first place?
I never claimed to.
So there is no scale.
You're superimposing. No, I believe it is highly probable that there is a scale, a hierarchy, a taxonomy of certainty.
Okay, so do you know that you believe that?
Within it, which is certain as I am.
Okay.
And that sits at the back, and I don't think it's a coincidence. The name of God means I am that I am.
Yeah.
And
So-
thereafter, it's probabilities. Now this is nitpicking. Let me be clear.
It's not nitpicking.
I would bet everything I have and my life that I am indeed sitting in Hyde Park having a conversation with you.
Yeah.
I am just epistemologically aware that technically, according to Hume, Gödel's incompleteness theorem and various other things, epistemologically I can't be certain. I have had dreams before where I thought I was awake. We've all had nightmares. Why are we scared of nightmares? Because we think it's real. We are self-deceiving animals to some extent, and we can't trust even our empirical experience, let alone our inferences, as much as we can.
Yeah.
So it is prudent to have a healthy skepticism and not assume that you know.
Well, I don't even think the skepticism.
That's what I'm saying.
I don't think the
Because if you
skepticism
make
is
that
healthy though.
foundation wrong, everything that arises from it will be weak.
So I don't think the skepticism is healthy, because then in no sense can we have knowledge in anything. I can't have any justified true belief on
You have a
anything.
sliding scale of knowledge.
Knowledge is justified true belief. Can I be justified in things that are true if I can't know whether anything is true?
You're making it digital. You're making it yes and no. You're making it propositionally.
Well, okay, I'm just gonna-
Boolean. And actually, the wise way to look at reality is on a sliding scale.
Okay.
Am I happy? Yes or no? It's the wrong question.
I'm not saying yes or no.
Let me give you an example of seriously, the Boolean thing can be a real problem. Most people do. It is a better question to ask how happy are you than to ask are you happy yes or no.
Okay.
If I ask are you happy, you can only answer yes no. That only gives two options. The reality of your experience is almost certainly on a sliding scale. So if you frame things as hierarchical questions.
When you say how happy are you, so this is my idea. When you say how happy are you, you're assuming that the person is on some spectrum of happiness already. You're assuming happiness is a thing already.
No, 'cause I'm
So you've
including
already answered the previous question of are you happy? The answer is yes. How happy are you? Spectrum.
Technically, you're right, but you're using that.
So
right
the
to
idea-
object to the whole concept of hierarchy.
No, but my idea is that there is a thing that you've already proven is certainly the case before you can argue from
No,
spectrum.
it's still an assumption.
Because it's certain that
Do
you
I
are
have to write
happy.
it? I asserted some probability. I'm not saying it's certain.
Okay. I assert the
Keep telling me
probability.
I'm saying
Yeah,
certain.
you're asserting but you already accepted that you asserted the probability that you are happy.
I
You asserted the probability that you are happy
Yes, I
because you don't know whether you are happy or not. So you can't ask the question how happy you are because you don't know whether you're happy or not.
With respect, this is the first time in the conversation I feel like you're just playing the kind of verbal rhetorical
No.
people can play, okay?
Okay, take care.
Cheers, nice to see.
Take care, guys.
I think now you're trying to, for some reason,
No.
head sideways rather than forward.
No. Forwardly, you're saying, I don't know if I'm happy or not.
Sorry, we're losing audience.
I don't know how you're wearing
Nice to
laws.
meet. Nice to meet you. Huh?
It's okay.
Everything comes down just to the sovereignty of God.
Nice.
This is just my. We were talking about the council and all those things interesting and the legitimacy, even of their like reasoning and whatever. So much of it just comes down to the sovereignty of God and whether you believe in that or not.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? I mean, if so, we can argue whether people are like legitimate in all of their actions and reasonings and stuff, but people are going to fail. We're obviously fallible as human beings, and ultimately, like all of these things come down to like, do I believe that God is sovereign? Like, am I going to read my Bible?
Dude, but what interpretation of God are you taking?
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, for example,
Do you
I
know
don't.
Jesus as the Son of God?
Well, for example, I don't believe in hell.
Yeah,
I'm guessing you guys maybe do.
I do, yeah.
Okay, there you go. So that this is a very there are there's different. Although God may be sovereign, it's about how we to understand the sovereignty of God. We do that individually with varying levels of accuracy, and that has consequences. Yeah.
Would you say that Christ is the most
Okay,
accurate?
so that's what we're discussing.
Regardless of my ability, though, to like grasp it or not, or like what I believe it to be, it doesn't change the fact that it's true.
No one claimed it did, but it will change the way I choose to live my life, and it will change the way I educate other people to live their life.
Sure, but would you not want
sovereign,
to?
I'm going to trust that no matter what I do.
Could I ask you a question? Wait, could I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Do you believe that Christ would be the most accurate interpretation?
Of Jesus or of God?
Yes.
100%.
Okay.
The exact
Do you believe that Christ?
The exact
Do you believe that Christ absolutely communicated that interpretation?
Yes.
Of course, right? So, do you believe that Christ gave the apostles the power to also dictate that interpretation too?
100%. I mean, sovereignty of God. I'm just saying
That's that's your so that's your epistemic category.
mixed with the Holy Spirit. Because I believe, obviously, that as soon
Yeah.
as Jesus opened
And now it's
Yeah.
the floodgates of heaven for us to receive the Holy Spirit.
Trying to talk about epistemology, how we know what the Bible is or how we know things that are true is because we have a framework that we can rely on.
Exactly.
I enjoyed this very much.
But at the end of the day, I
only
feel,
thought had
yes,
God's sovereignty is the framework you're using. It's literally the framework.
it has to. God's sovereignty and the Holy Spirit.
Are you a Calvinist? Reformed? Are you Reformed? It's okay.
I don't know. I believe that God knows.
Thank you.
I
Okay.
believe that He knows where I'm going.
Okay.
I believe in free will and that He knows.
Good. That's a good theory, man. Well, I think it's been lovely, this conversation. I'll help you out, man. Yeah, man. I was going to help you out, but it's okay. You seem that you got it. Thank you, man. Good.
Nice to chat.
It's all right,
I
man.
didn't realize you were chipping in near the Platonic ideals. So he thought the Platonic ideals were floating above forms.
Yeah, but Plato didn't believe that, like,
Then fed into the Neoplatonic
they were physical, right?
So that, a lot of Western Christianity incorporates like, Greek philosophic ideas into our ideology, and it's actually an incorrect interpretation because the Jewish tradition didn't actually even believe in the separation of the soul and the body. Plato introduced the idea that the soul and the body were separate in the first place.
The Jews didn't believe in separation of soul and body?
They understood the idea of embodiment itself.
All of the Rabbanim believed that the Rabbanim believed that there was a separation of the soul and body. All of them did.
Sorry?
So, in Second Temple Judaism, for example,
Hold on. I was just trying to.
You guys are much brighter and better informed than virtually everybody else.
Oh,
no,
praise God.
That's great,
It's
man.
literally just the Holy Spirit, I'm telling you.
No,
I feel like I know
the
much.
fact that you're referencing the Platonic ideals.
That was where we got the idea of
clearly know the
carnality.
breakdown of your people. Well, I'll Google and find out if Matthew,
Breakdown.
Luke, and John were alive. When we get home, you can check it.
All good, bro.
I'll apologize in advance.
It's fine. It's okay, man. You don't even need to say sorry. It's
Kabbalah,
fine.
then? Do you know the Kabbalah?
Yeah, Kabbalah is basically a
The
Jewish
ancient-
philosophy.
The mystic tradition of the Judaism, which would have been arguing about these things as well. But the Neoplatonic tradition,
The existence of numbers, letters, and their relation to
much
God.
overlap, I believe. They don't have God external like the Muslims do. They have God as implicit and internal. So when you say things like God being embodied, I think you're alluding to that kind of possibility.
Are you talking about
which they would reject.
the understanding of the Sephirah? They're all like created manifestations of gods, and then you have Ein Sof, which is sort of like the infinite of infinites for God. It's a very gnarly thing. In fact, there are certain books like the Zohar
Okay, no, I'm super impressed.
that you're not
I'm
able to
also
read until.
super pissed off.
What do you mean?
I'm super pissed off that you then. Okay, the fact that you know Ansof, or the three
Yeah,
tiers above
the
Keter,
Ein Sof is just the light of God, but it's also
Capitalism
creative.
is fairly oblique, right? And the
Yeah.
fact that you know, and that's an oblique aspect of it.
Yeah.
But then why did you try and do that word trick before?
That wasn't a word. There wasn't a word trick. My point is that there are things that you already know are certain, apart from the fact that you exist.
No, you're asserting that, and I'm refuting.
Okay.
Okay,
Are you
very,
certain that
very-
you are
This one
refuting?
feels-
This one feels like non-productive. I enjoyed the other
The idea is
conversation
just
more.
like-
No, I know it seems unproductive, but the problem is its foundation. Until you
Yeah.
can establish your hierarchy of knowledge, you're not going to be able to have coaching
Do you
conversations.
mean what you can be 100% sure about?
He's asserting that there's
On a sliding
probability.
Scale of certainty. What is the
Right.
thing like? Okay, hands up anyone who thinks they are not.
Pretty sure I'm alive right
You're
now.
pretty sure.
I'm sure this could
If
be a
you're- if
simulation,
you're
bro.
left- no, hang on. Right, that's the important distinction. I understand it could be a simulation, but even if it's a simulation, it still is. It's not isn't.
How do you know it is?
There is definitely isness.
I agree.
Because it is intuitively inevitable. It's not an inference, it's not an analysis, it's not a logical deduction.
It
It's
is.
the thing that has to be in order for me to start participating in deduction. So
I
it's
think
a
I'm in the
priori to
same.
inference.
I'm in the same ring
yeah.
as you.
Yeah, that's what Descartes says. So Descartes says, in order for you to be
They
able
may
to
not
think,
be.
you need to be able to exist. And the fact that you're thinking proves that you exist. But
I don't believe. I mean, I know that would. Yeah, I think therefore I am. Yeah.
but
Whatever,
that's what
I don't-
he's advocating.
Well, yeah. Well, I don't.
I'm advocating a sliding scale of certainty, and
Okay.
therefore you're best off describing things with questions, not binary in terms of yes, no, where you end up going, do you know this certainly, yes or no, and I don't. Instead, try and ask your questions in terms of sliding scales of probability.
Yeah, which may
You get
be a
more
bit.
accurate and honest answers.
I think I
express
agree,
happiness.
especially since
Yeah,
we
you can get more accurate, honest
understand your
answers, yeah.
perspective. We could be talking about the, how can I be sure that your experience
Yeah, what's
of
up?
the same reality is the experience that I also
But
have.
would you not also agree that when you do that sliding scale of certainty, right, that probability, there are also prior things that you've already assumed within that binary?
Are you saying
it's the
that-
only assumption you need.
Are you saying that this
That there is a binary
probability
then, sometimes.
excludes the existence
Yeah,
of
that's the
absolute
only
truth? Is that why you're
Good.
opposed?
So those are two things. The fact that you exist and then there are binaries.
Sorry, you were going. No, I'm saying I am is an absolute Boolean certainty.
Sure, Boolean certainty.
Only Boolean certainty.
Okay.
And you
Yes,
keep
please.
trying to slide in second ones through the back door.
I'm saying that there are other Boolean certainties. That's what I'm saying.
Are you
Well,
saying
give me an
that
example.
is the reason that
The
you're
fact that
opposed
there
to the
is
sliding scale of
binary
probability?
whatsoever.
No, that's an assumption on my part because that's an intellectualization. And my basis for saying I am is pre-intellectual. It's based on intuitive certainty because there is no other way it can be.
Intuitive certainty is intellectual.
No, it's not.
What's
I'm-
intuition?
But before you make an inference, before the act of deciding or interpreting or
Yeah.
analyzing is an act.
Yeah, and it requires that you
Sequentially,
exist.
There has to be a thing there before you do it.
How do you know that there needs to be a thing there?
I don't. I feel it intuitively and inevitably.
So it's your feelings, that's subjective.
Yes, correct. I actually think you're better off saying I feel therefore.
Yeah, because I was gonna say you can't.
So then
Hey,
you're
I think
trusting.
therefore I am, and actually
I
I feel
don't-
therefore
Yeah.
I am
If
is
I
better.
thought-
So ultimately, you're trusting this one feeling that you feel like you exist.
There is no configuration of reality where I am not 100% absorbed in it. There is no.
But you're
other-
feeling that. That feeling is needed for you to be able to make any other assertion whatsoever, or to even know that you exist.
The fact of being able to feel.
Can you trust that feeling?
I can't trust what it tells me, but I can trust that it is. So what it's telling me is an.
It's telling you that it is.
Is hermeneutics. It's an interpretation, or it's phenomenological.
Yeah.
That's after the event, but the raw data before it is analysed is what it is.
Is it-
Then I analyse it. Now my conclusion about what it is
Yeah.
may be wrong, which is why it's not certain. But the isness itself.
Is
the
it
only
telling you that it
alternative
is?
Nothing, and this is not nothing.
Exactly.
The idea is,
Nothing has no differentiation of colour, shape, style.
yeah, but that's
Clearly
already an
nothing.
idea of being that comes from people like Aristotle. We already have an idea of what
Sorry,
existence itself is.
No, although that is an idea, what I'm doing is I'm expressing as an idea something which was already a priori intuitively obvious, and I've conceptualized it as a notion.
We know that
The fact
it's
I've expressed it
obvious.
as a notion doesn't mean I got there through deduction. I didn't.
You didn't get there through deduction.
I'm just looking back on my intuition and deductively describing it. It's not the same thing. The
Okay.
intuition is inevitable. And if something
But
is
the
inevitable,
knowledge,
it's inevitable.
but then that means that the
Objectively
knowledge of your existence.
true. Why would you want to fight on this subject?
I'm not fighting on this. I'm just saying, I'm trying to show you that there are other things that you are certain
I'm
about.
asking you to tell me a certainty.
And then I did, and then you said that you're assuming those things. And then I asked you, are you not assuming the existence of yourself already via your intuition?
Nice to meet.
Take a,
Nice to meet.
like via your intuition, you're assuming these things to be the case.
No, I'm not. All I'm saying I know is I have the intuition I am, and thereafter everything else is my analysis.
You're not
and
knowing
all
that
my
you're assuming that.
analysis is potentially flawed.
But you're not knowing that you're assuming that you exist.
No, an assumption is an intellectual conclusion. If
Like-
you mean an assumption as an intellectual conclusion, no, I am not arguing I exist based on any intellectual process whatsoever. I'm saying pre-intellectually, I inevitably am.
Okay,
I feel
and you
before I
know
see
this,
it.
right? And you know this
That's
certainly.
what knowing is. I'm
Okay.
redefining knowing.
Okay, what does it
Because
mean to
you're
know,
defining
just by you?
knowing within an epistemological framework as an intellectual process, and I'm arguing that if you're using it that way, I don't mean it that way. That's why I've called it a sliding scale of certainty.
So what does it mean for you to know that you exist? What does the word know mean in that sentence?
It means it is, as I said, 100% inevitably the case.
Okay, so by know, you mean it is inevitably the case.
No, we actually, you know what? The problem is the word no. The problem is that the language has instructed us to use the word no in multiple different ways, and we should probably distinguish. So I would say epistemology is about intellectual knowing, and I'm using knowing in an a priori sense. Hence, I'm calling it an intuition. But I keep trying to ground it.
But an intuition is intellect. It's subjective.
Okay, then that's where our problem is. No, intuition in the terms I'm using it is pre-intellectual. I
Okay.
feel before I think.
Okay, so feelings come before thinking.
Well, in my experience, yes. Do you think differently?
Yeah,
Or you think before you feel?
yeah.
Really?
So I think about certain
Really?
I'll give you an example. I think about
When
my
you were
mother.
forming in the womb, you
So-
think you had an idea first.
I'm
Really?
saying that there are
I think you
I'm saying that there are cases where you think before you feel. So for example,
maybe, but
yeah.
if I travel back and back and back at your genesis, sperm hits egg, I will bet my bottom dollar that the first thing that happened when you sort of metaphorically emerged from nothingness was you had a sensation, not a thought.
We may not know
You
that.
didn't articulate. I don't know that.
So then you
That's
can't make
my
that case.
guess.
You're assuming that that is the case. So your
That is
argument
because
isn't
it's
able to work
it's an
because you
intellect-
don't know that certainly that you did feel before you think.
No, because I'm post hoc trying to rationalise the intuitive certainty.
So there is no intuitive certainty because you can't verify it.
No, my intuitive certainty that I exist is not communicatable to you. You
Okay.
need to be clear on that.
But is it communicatable to yourself?
It doesn't need communicating, it's implicit.
Is it communicatable?
The very
Is it
fact that
communicatable to yourself in
the
any
very
sense?
fact that I can ask myself the question, is it communicatable? A priori, I must exist.
Okay.
In order to ask that question,
But the
it
question,
presumes that I
but the
exist.
question itself is getting at a deeper issue as
Do
to
you
whether
think
that
there's any
idea is
chance?
communicatable. Yeah, she came. Mad. Okay. I think we're gonna have to cut it there, man. My boy just came through. He's wearing a Trapstar jacket, as you can see. Well, thank you so much, man.
To chat.
It's a
I
good
don't
conversation
believe
about
that you think
epistemology.
there's a chance you don't exist. I don't believe that.
No, and the
I
reason
think you're over-arguing your point.
and the reason why I don't believe that is because I believe that my mind can be certain of certain things. Like there are certain things that my mind can't be certain of. Like for example, whether I'm going to eat the next day. I can't be certain of that. But
I said, are you certain that you exist?
I already said that I'm certain that I exist.
Excellent.
And the reason that I am certain is
Now I'm
because
asking you to give me an example of anything else you can be certain about.
Pardon?
And now I'm asking you to give me an example of anything else you can be 100% certain
Okay.
about.
Yeah.
Given that, you could be dreaming.
That I am
You
composite.
could be in the Matrix.
Yeah.
You could be a computer
That I am a
simulation.
composite thing. That I am composite. That I am composite.
That's an analytical assumption.
I'm made up of parts, and that is something that I'm certain of. I am made of parts. I am not one thing.
No, you might be dreaming in a vat.
I am made up of the fact that I'm thinking about that I am and the fact that I am. Those are two things that are not identical. So I am composite. That's another thing that I'm certain of.
That you are.
Composite, yes.
That you're made. That you have a physical form.
No, that I'm composite because,
You have multiple parts.
yeah,
Okay, so you're sure you have multiple parts.
yes,
So you're sure you're not one.
yeah.
How?
Because there are two things within me that exist. The fact that, yeah, we gotta go. So those two things are the fact that I exist, right, that we both agree on, and the fact that I'm thinking about the fact that I exist. I'm certain about that.
Sorry, are these inferences you're presenting?
These aren't inferences. The fact that I exist is already a priori, right?
You're using logic, and that's an inference.
No, we're saying it's a priori, like you said, right? It's an a priori intuition. That a priori
You
intuition,
have an a priori intuition that you have multiple parts. You have before that you have an a priori intuition you are.
yeah, but the
And
fact
then
that
you- and
well,
then
I gave
you
you, I'm trying to give you two things. The fact that I exist is one of them. The other one is the fact that I'm thinking about the fact that I exist, or the fact that I'm feeling about that. Those are two
You're
things.
Separating that. When he says I think therefore and the act of thinking is the proof of the thing, or the act of feeling is. You're
The
making
proof
the
of
feeling separate
well, you
from the
already
being.
yeah,
But
feeling
we're
and
saying-
being are two different things.
No, no, no.
Just say
After
why.
the event.
I think you're wonderful, and I think you're wonderful.
Thanks.
I know you don't. I don't think you believe in God, but I feel the joy of the Lord over you deeply. I don't know.
I know, I appreciate
No,
it.
no, like,
I kind of do.
seriously,
I kind of do believe.
I'm like, I feel
great.
God like smiling over your search for Him, and I like.
Why are you laughing?
feel
Why are you laughing? Why are you laughing?
love for like wisdom
It's not funny.
discourse, and that I actually like, no, like truly, like I really, really feel
Appreciate.
like, no, it's like I just, and I like seriously for you too. It's so amazing that like I can tell you're young and you know so much, and it's like we're in the States, we're in LA, and tons of people like preach on street corners, but there's nowhere to have like discussions like this, so it's really cool.
Sorry, I thought
But-
you guys were part of the same group.
No,
No,
I
no.
just came.
Hanging out.
Yeah, we
I came from Oblak. You know what I'm trying to say? I came from Oblak,
No,
and I just pulled up.
And I get the feeling that if there's a God, you guys are very on tune with. Now,
Well done.
I think getting the intellectual part accurately is secondary to living. I think the practice.
Yeah, you got to live first. Orthopraxy is better than, you know what I'm saying.
The problem is that people disagree
Knowing
about the
Christ,
intellectual.
his life is better than
But that's why
knowing Christ.
theology is the highest of the sciences instead of philosophy, bro.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
true, man.
Yeah, man.
My dad's Muslim. I'm Christian.
There you go.
But I
That is nuts.
I love that. In some ways, I feel as though you won't let your I hope that you won't let your intellectual pursuit get in the way of you experiencing and living in what the fullness of life that I believe Jesus came to offer.
I think for him, living is
to
everything.
you.
So
And there's an abundance of life
It is, right.
that you have access to that I think can transcend beyond our.
I don't even
knowledge.
know.
How old are you?
I'm 22.
What? It's cool.
I kind of do.
Yo.
Oh, what do you do?
But yeah, basically, hey yo, do you want to do a?
Social media, but
It's just to wrap up. So
Oh, you're trying to find
yeah, man, we gotta wrap this up. So I had a conversation. Hello guys. Hello guys. It's SIIIG. Just had a conversation with a person that is not necessarily a solipsist, although I would call him that, but someone that can't be certain about anything apart from the fact that he exists. I tried to give him examples of times where you can be certain about certain things. So for example, the fact that I am thinking about, or in his words, feeling about the fact that he exists. Those are two things. And that will produce a third thing, the fact that you're composite, because they're not the same as each other. And again, they're not the whole of what I am as an individual. And so I gave him those examples. Again, there were some terminological differences, but that's okay. Thank you. That's it? It's done? Okay.